Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're standing somewhere you think you know, but you don't. Not really. You're on a wooden dock that smells like brine and rotting rope, and the water beneath you is black as ink. Somewhere in the fog, a galley groans against its moorings, its hold packed with silk that cost more than your village. This is Venice, but not the Venice of gelato shops and selfie sticks. This is Venice when it could break empires with a handshake and a lie. Good thing this isn't your life, because out here, on these warped planks in the 13th century, you're standing at the edge of the most ruthless commercial empire the world has ever seen. And it's built on nothing but water, ambition, and a willingness to do whatever it takes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this little history corner reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the dock, and the first thing that hits you isn't the sight, it's the smell. Salt, yes, but underneath it something sharper. Tar from the caulking between planks, the metallic tang of bronze fittings, and beneath all of it, the faint sweetness of spices leaking from a cracked crate, somewhere in the dark. Your boots, leather worn thin at the heel, settle into wood that's been smoothed by 1,000 footfalls, and you feel the gentle sway of the lagoon beneath you. The water here doesn't rush, it breathes, in and out, patient as a predator. It's late, past midnight, maybe closer to dawn. The kind of hour when honest men are asleep, and the ones who aren't honest are doing their best work. You're standing in the Rialto district, though if you're expecting the bridge, you're 600 years too early. Right now, in 1204, this is just a cluster of wooden wharves and warehouses, pressing against each other like nervous animals. Somewhere behind you a dog barks once, then stops. Ahead, the silhouette of a galley rises from the mist. Long, low, predatory. It's just returned from the east, and its deck still gleams with seawater. You weren't supposed to be here. Nobody just wanders into the Rialto at this hour, unless they're loading cargo, collecting debts, or making the kind of deals that don't get written down. But here you are, and the man approaching you, boots clicking on wet stone, doesn't seem surprised. He's dressed in dark wool, a merchant's practical wealth, and his eyes measure you the way you'd measure a length of rope. Useful or not useful? That's the only question that matters in Venice. You're late, he says, though you've never met him before. His Venetian dialect is thick, chopped into hard consonants that sound like coins hitting a table. The galley sails with the tide. You want to see what we brought back. You see it now. You follow him because this is Venice, and Venice doesn't offer twice. He leads you along the wharf, past coils of rope thick as your arm, past barrels stamped with marks you don't recognize, past a group of men unloading something heavy wrapped in canvas. They don't look up. The merchant stops at the galley's gangplank, and someone above tosses down a lantern. It swings, casting wild shadows, and in that swaying light you see it, the hold of the ship, open like a mouth, packed with treasure. Not gold, well, some gold, but mostly bolts of silk in colors you didn't know existed. Crimson so deep it looks wet. Azure that hurts to look at. Bales of pepper and cinnamon stacked like masonry. Crates of Byzantine glasswork. Goblets that catch the lantern light and throw it back like frozen fire. And in the corner, wrapped in oilcloth, something large and bronze. The merchant sees you looking. From the hippodrome, he says quietly. Constantinople. You freeze, because you know what that means. 3 weeks ago, the Fourth Crusade, that grand holy mission to reclaim Jerusalem, took a detour, a very profitable detour. On April 12th, 1204, Crusader armies broke through Constantinople's walls and spent 3 days tearing the greatest city in Christendom apart. They looted churches, they melted down icons, they packed centuries of Roman and Byzantine treasure onto ships and sailed it west. And sitting in front of you, wrapped in oilcloth like a dirty secret, is one of the bronze horses that stood in the hippodrome for 800 years. It'll end up on the facade of St. Mark's Basilica, and it'll stay there for the next 8 centuries, a permanent trophy of the day Venice convinced an army of Christians to sack a Christian city for profit. Historians still argue whether Doge Enrico Dandolo planned the whole thing from the start, a 90-year-old blind man who supposedly stood on the prow of a Venetian ship and ordered the assault himself. Some say he was a genius, some say he was a monster. Venice didn't care. They got 3/8 of Constantinople, plus Crete, Euboea, and a necklace of ports stretching across the eastern Mediterranean. Overnight, Venice went from wealthy to obscene. They didn't just control trade, they were trade. But let's rewind, because Venice didn't start here, on this blood-soaked April night in 1204. It started in the mud. The year is 568, and you're not standing anymore, you're running. Behind you, the Lombards are coming, not metaphorically, literally. Their cavalry is 3 miles back and closing, and you're part of a refugee column, stumbling east from the collapsing Roman towns of the Veneto plain. You're a farmer, maybe, or a craftsman, someone who used to have a house. You don't anymore. What you have is a cart with a broken wheel, and 2 children who won't stop crying, and you're slogging through marsh grass toward a cluster of islands that rise from the Adriatic lagoon like the backs of sleeping dragons. The islands are uninhabitable. Everyone knows this. They're just mud and reeds and mosquitoes, waterlogged sandbars that flood when the tide rises. But the Lombards don't have boats. And you do, if you can call a raft made of driftwood and hope a boat. So you pole your way into the lagoon, and you find a patch of semi-solid ground, and you drive wooden pilings into the mud, and you build, not a city, not yet, just a shack, just survival. But here's the thing about survival. It has a way of turning into ambition when you're not looking. Fast forward 2 centuries. The shacks are now houses. The houses are now districts. The refugees are now Venetians. And they've discovered something. The lagoon that almost killed them is the best defense in Europe. Armies can't reach you. Siege towers sink. And if you know the channels, the secret paths through the shallows where the water is deep enough for your flat-bottomed boats, but too shallow for anyone else's, you're untouchable. Even better, you're sitting at the crossroads of 2 worlds. To the west, Europe, hungry for Eastern goods. To the east, Byzantium, drowning in silk and spices, but desperate for European silver, timber, and wheat. Venice becomes the middleman, the translator, the broker. And brokers, you learn very quickly, get rich. In 1082, Byzantine Emperor Alexius I makes a decision that will haunt his empire forever. He grants Venice total trading rights throughout Byzantine territories. No taxes, no customs fees. Venetian merchants can sail into any Byzantine port, set up shop, and undercut local traders with impunity. It's the economic equivalent of handing someone the keys to your house and going on vacation. Alexius thinks he's securing a military ally. What he's actually doing is creating a monster. By 1100, Venetian merchant galleys are everywhere. They're in Alexandria, trading European wool for Egyptian cotton. They're in Acre, swapping Flemish textiles for Levantine pepper. They're in Trebizond, exchanging Bohemian silver for Black Sea grain. And every single transaction passes through Venice, where the Republic takes its cut. The city's wealth becomes architectural. The Doge's palace begins to rise. St. Mark's Basilica swells with mosaics made from Byzantine gold. And in 1104, construction begins on something that will change warfare forever. The arsenal. You've heard of assembly lines. You've heard of mass production, standardized parts, interchangeable components. The stuff of the Industrial Revolution, right? Except Venice invents it in 1104. The arsenal starts as a state-owned shipyard on the northern edge of the city. a walled complex of docks, forges and warehouses covering 45 hectares. By 1320, it's the largest industrial site in Europe, employing 16,000 workers called arsenalotti, and it operates on principles that won't be rediscovered until Henry Ford starts making cars. Galleys move down a production line. One station installs the keel, the next adds ribs, the next planks the hull. Rope makers, sail stitchers, caulkers, bronze casters, everyone has one job, and they do it perfectly, over and over. At peak efficiency, the arsenal can produce a fully armed war galley in a single day. 1 day. It's the medieval equivalent of a nuclear weapon. A production capacity so overwhelming that no rival can match it. And Venice uses it. Oh, they use it. When Genoa challenges Venetian dominance in the eastern Mediterranean, Venice builds a fleet and crushes them at the Battle of Chioggia in 1380. When pirates threaten shipping lanes, Venice sends hunter-killer squadrons that don't take prisoners. When the Ottomans start pushing west, Venice holds them at bay for 2 centuries through sheer shipbuilding endurance. The arsenal is more than a shipyard. It's a promise. Cross Venice, and we will drown you in wood and canvas and bronze until you forget what losing looks like. But here's the joke, and it's a good one, in a dark sort of way. Venice's whole empire is built on a lie. They're not conquerors, they don't have legions. They don't even have much land. What they have is leverage. They loan money to crusader kings who can't pay it back, then take ports as collateral. They broker deals between rivals, then sell both sides the weapons. They marry into Byzantine nobility, then inherit trade monopolies. It's an empire built on contracts, debts, and the willingness to smile while driving a very sharp knife into someone's economic kidneys. And it works because everyone needs Venice more than Venice needs anyone. You're back on the dock now. The merchant is watching you, waiting for a reaction to the bronze horse. You don't give him one. In Venice, showing emotion is showing weakness. Instead, you ask the only question that matters. How much? He smiles. It doesn't reach his eyes. More than you have. But perhaps we can discuss terms. And just like that, you're Venetian. The lantern swings one last time, and the light softens, folding the galley and the merchant and the stolen bronze horse into the same gentle darkness that holds everything here. Everything that was. You feel the wood beneath your boots again, solid and real, but also not, like pressing your hand against a window and feeling the cold of a world you can't quite touch. The merchant is gone now, or maybe he was never there. Maybe you were always alone on this dock, standing at the edge of an empire that built itself on water and will, breathing in the smell of salt and ambition and the faint, fading ghost of cinnamon. Venice doesn't ask you to remember it. It never needed to. It simply was, with a ferocity that bent the world around it. And then one day the world moved on. Ships found new routes, empires rose in the west, and the lagoon settled back into stillness. The arsenal's fires went cold. The galleys rotted at their moorings. The merchants packed their ledgers and disappeared into time, leaving only stones and stories, and 4 bronze horses on a balcony, watching tourists who will never know what they're looking at. But you know now. You stood on those docks. You smelled the spices. You saw the hold of a ship packed with the plunder of Byzantium. And you understood, just for a moment, what it meant to be untouchable, to be the hinge the world turned on, to be Venice, before it drowned in its own beauty. The fog rolls in thicker now, and the water whispers something you can't quite hear. A name, maybe. A promise. An ending that sounds like a beginning. Let it carry you back. Let the tide pull you home. Close your eyes and drift. The empire is sleeping. And so, Now, are you?